What is happening at the moment in the United States in relation to the selection of the president who will serve from 2021 until 2025 is in fact part of a trajectory that began in earnest on the 2nd of November 1963 when President John F. Kennedy was assassinated in Dallas. That was the start. This is, and how it appears, the culmination. In the middle, an interlude if you like, was 9/11, when the World Trade Center was destroyed and buildings around it were destroyed as well. There's much that people can speculate. There has been much speculation ever since the Kennedy assassination and ever since 9/11, and there's going to be decades of speculation after what's happening at the moment in the United States. But it is clear that the official narrative in relation to both the assassination of President Kennedy and 9/11 are not entirely reliable. First of all, the assassination of President Kennedy was a professional hit job. That was not just one lone gunman who came and decided to knock off JFK because he was having a bad day. Secondly, the destruction of the World Trade Center was very much carefully planned. But the distinction between the Kennedy assassination, the World Trade Center, and what's happening now is that it would appear that those with the motives behind the first two incidents have the same motives as here. But the distinction is that what's happening now is being done in plain sight. This is a classic psychopathic trajectory. Psychopaths begin with love bombing and they begin with, acting quite covertly. But what's happening in the United States at the moment is not covert. Indeed, it's deliberately not covert, because anybody who can testify to an abusive relationship with the psychopath will know that eventually the psychopath just turns around and says, well, I'm going to do this anyway and I don't care. So this is the point that has been reached in America. And then when the psychopath becomes openly abusive, one then must look to the enablers of the psychopath. In this case, it's the mainstream media. From my point of view, I'm finding that the most reliable information I can get is the Twitter feed of President Donald Trump. That's not a joke or an exaggeration, because he's linking to properly researched and level-headed online remarks about what is actually going on. Another key attribute of the psychopath is bafflement and bewilderment. But those of us who know how psychopaths work are not in the slightest bit surprised or even disturbed at what's going on. This, as I said, is part of a trajectory that began with the assassination of President Kennedy. President Kennedy was a maverick. He was a Democrat, but he was still a maverick. He was the last maverick president of the US until Trump. And that was carefully administered until Donald Trump actually broke through the matrix in 2016. The moment when Trump broke through the matrix was in America, kind of around 3:30 in the morning in America, when it suddenly became apparent that Trump was going to win, whereas up to that particular point Clinton had it. And it was wonderful from a comedic point of view to look at all of Clinton's fans crying and all of this kind of thing. It wasn't relevant, but it was comedic. Before Kennedy was inaugurated, one of the last public gestures of his predecessor, Dwight Eisenhower, who was a Republican president and who had been, in many regards, quite successful, although Eisenhower did preside over McCarthyism. One of the last gestures of Eisenhower was to tell the public at large, but particularly his successor, President Kennedy, that the greatest threat to Western society was from the military-industrial complex. Eisenhower was right, and it was very brave of him to say this. This was his parting move as president. And it is highly significant that Eisenhower said it when he was still in the final days of his presidency. A lot of the cheesebrains don't realise that Donald Trump will be president until the 20th of January coming. I predict he'll be president beyond that as well. But having said that, irrespective of any claims being made, then Donald Trump will be president until the 20th of January. Eisenhower took advantage of those last 2.5 months of his presidency to warn the world and President Kennedy, his successor, of what was coming. Eisenhower was a military man, and he was very well respected in the United States. He was liked and respected by the people. Okay, he wasn't perfect. Okay, there were many flaws to his presidency, but that was not his fault. He was doing his best. He was also, as much as could be said of an establishment man, which Eisenhower was, he was close enough to being honest and conscientious. He was very well regarded in the US military. Genuinely very well regarded in the US military. So Eisenhower had a lot of moral authority. And his warning about the military-industrial complex was not to be taken lightly. And indeed it hasn't been. So anyway, Kennedy was assassinated. And irrespective of all the grassy Nollingtons and all of these people who are coming out with different conspiracy theories regarding Kennedy, it's quite clear that that was a professional job and had been planned long in advance. One of the consequences of the Kennedy assassination was to undermine the sovereignty of the US presidency and to send a clear reminder to anybody who was a US president that they weren't really as sovereign as the Constitution might like them to believe. The same thing happened in 9/11, and the same thing is happening now. But the distinction with now, of course, is that this is being done in the open because the psychopaths have just turned openly abusive. Previously, both with 9/11 and the Kennedy assassination, there had been some efforts to confuse people and to create some kind of veneer of legitimacy. That's not the case anymore. It's interesting also now to look at the mainstream media, particularly the pathetic, craven mainstream media here in the Republic of Ireland. The Irish mainstream media is reminiscent of, you know, this particularly sad schoolboy who's watching the big bullies fight it out and who's, you know, trying to kind of egg them on and is watching all of this. There's a large element of Renfielding going on with the Irish mainstream media. But what happened with the Kennedy assassination and what happened with 9/11 is what's happening now. There's no going back from this. And even a year from now, this is going to be a very different world. Because those who are in favour of what's going on against Trump are not responding like sane human beings. And that includes at editorial level in what had previously been respected organs like the Irish Times and RTE. They are having a mass is the best word to use for it. It is a situation. Getting back to earlier, it's very hard at the moment to get reliable information about what's going on. And that's one of the features of a war situation. The first casualty of war, of course, is the truth. And one of the casualties at the moment is the truth. But those of us out here in alternative, on tinfoil land out here, all with our tinfoil hats and paranoia about 5G and all the rest of it, we all could tell you that. We could have told you that 5 years ago, that the mainstream media is crooked and is biased. But not only are they crooked and biased, they have also now, very quickly, descended into insanity and infantilism. This isn't because they are the perpetrators of this, certainly not a crowd of cokeheads and cat ladies in the Irish Times or all the vegans in the Ranelagh corner of the RTE canteen. They're not participants in this. They're not listened to beyond southeast Dublin, really. You know, like if you were to go and say to Donald Trump, the Irish Times or RTE, he'd say, who? And it's the same as that schoolboy thing. There are these kids watching on, and then you actually go to the bullies who are slugging it out in the yard, and you say, look at them. They say, who, what? It's the same thing. But it is a mass read that these people are going on with. They're not people, really. They're not people. It's a mass meltdown that they're having here. If you want to get reliable news at the moment, as reliable as possible, it is in fact the Twitter feed of Donald Trump. Anybody who looks at Trump can see that he's staying very calm and that he is staying very factual. And this is highly impressive. Whoever is having a re, it's certainly not Trump. And he's used to this kind of thing. He was a very tough businessman. He dealt with bankruptcies. He dealt with all kinds of adversity during his entire adult life. He's able for this. He is providing great inspiration, and he's providing real leadership. He's an inspiration. 75. The man is 75. He didn't choose retirement. He didn't choose a lifetime of playing golf. He went straight into this. And again, it highlights how weak so many Irish men in particular are, how contemptible so many of them are. These ones going around with masks, you know, and wear a mask, bruh, and all the rest of it. I would say that it's very sad, except for the fact that they deserve it. And it's possible now that we're going to watch the whole hysteria around COVID-19 diminish very quickly. Becoming clear that COVID-19 was a scam. Although we all said that out here. We're all saying, don't trust the mainstream media. It's all a scam. What's happened here? You know, this is... but one of the problems then when you go to the alt scene, it's not a problem, it's a feature. It's a feature of the anarchy of the alt scene and the fact that we do not have editors breathing down our neck telling us what we can or cannot say, is that sometimes they can get hysterical and they can panic and they can say, you know, tinfoil hat kinds of things. And the important thing is to stay calm. A while ago I commented on the film The Mist, and the people, here's a plot spoiler, the people who were killed in the end or who lost out in the end were those who did not stay calm. There were also those who did not objectively try and see the big picture. Donald Trump is Mrs. Carmody in The Mist. People didn't like Mrs. Carmody, and a lot of people don't like Trump. It's hard to understand why they don't like Trump or what he has done. And I think my own theory about Trump is simply he's himself. He doesn't kowtow to people. He speaks his mind and panders to nobody. They don't want somebody like that in the presidency. They want somebody like Biden, who's senile and who'll just do what he's told. This is also a case of those, you know, there's nothing more blind than those who will not see. One must look at Joe Biden's behaviour around children, recorded when he was vice president, swearing in members of the Senate. That's the constitutional role, or it's a role, it might not be in the Constitution, of the vice president. He or she swears in new members of the Senate. And Biden's behaviour during that was appalling. Absolutely appalling, but it was clear great guy psychopath behaviour. And Biden is a particular, falls into a particular mould of psychopath, the great guy psychopath. Hey guys, hey, it's Joe. Hey, great to see you. Great, hey guys, great to see you. Well, oh, who's this little lady? She's only 6. No dating till you're 30. Ha 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 ha. You come over here. I'll just hold your breast here. I'll just cup your breasts in my hand here. We'll move over to now. Hey, I may be a Democrat, but I'm okay. Hey. I'll tell you what a great family. Hey, great to see you guys. Hey. I'll tell you what. Oh, what a lovely big family with loads of... Hey, all the lovely kids in this family. Oh, come on. Great to see you guys. Can I sniff your hair? This was an abuse of his office. And the way that he was indifferent to making people uncomfortable, both with his remarks and his physical groping of people, including children, teenage girls, and young children, is there for all to see. Personally, at a personal level, this person is unsuitable for any kind of public office. And it's been reported on social media repeatedly for over 2 years. Really, since he left office as vice president. Yet, it's not getting into the mainstream media. They can see it there. It's videoed, you know, on the official videography of Congress shows Biden and records Biden behaving repeatedly in a consistently inappropriate and over-sexualized way. No, that's not, you know, it doesn't fit the narrative. Um, I put a post on Twitter last night, and to paraphrase it, I said, the time has come, and we are now sitting in the train ready to leave. We're going to leave now, and anybody who still wants to believe the mainstream media narrative can stay behind on the platform. It's not our problem. This gets back to that Greek mythological thing, where sometimes one has to kill one's own best friend. But then the actual fact, although the Greek mythology may or may not acknowledge it, is that they were never your friend. This is where we're at now. This is what's happened. And very serious decisions are going to be coming for people. But the biggest test here in Ireland was the masks. That was, I never recall something as demonic as that, something as invidious as the mask thing, and how many fell for it. Because in my case, I just saw the mask thing coming, and I said, well, that's all right, sure. Who cares about this? This is just more their carry on. This is, it's just the government. Don't worry. You wouldn't take it seriously. And I didn't take it seriously. And that, I think, for me, was what helped me to get through it. Not that I thought there was anything particularly to get through. In the first week of the mask scam here in Ireland, I found there were, in total, 3 instances of people getting aggressive with me. What is interesting and very significant is that they were all men in late middle age. On one occasion, a duty manager in a supermarket apprehended me, and I said to him, no, I'm not going to wear a mask, and I'm claiming any exemption available to me, and I'm leaving it at that. And do you know what he said? He said, okay. And I still see him there, and he and I chat to each other every day, and he's a good man, and he's doing his best. Did I give him a lecture? No, it's not my place to lecture people. Don't lecture people. Let them make their own minds up. It's not our job to educate. This is what I said about, we're now sitting in the train in our special compartment ready to go. We're leaving them behind on the platform. The door is still open. They can get on if they want to. They won't. Leave them. Forget about it. Don't worry. But getting back to the masks, it was only men who got aggressive with me for not wearing a mask. The women were probably just too intimidated. They kept their mouths shut. One woman did say I was making her uncomfortable. I said, well, that's your problem. But she only said that after some of the men chipped in or piped up in the first day of the scam back in August. The reason why I analyse that these men got aggressive with me for refusing to wear a mask is because they are embarrassed at their own cowardice. That is the only analysis that I can rationally put on it. But then, in Ireland, we had Golfgate, in which 81 golfers, who were members of the official establishment, shall we say, flouted the law openly in the Station House Hotel in Connemara in Galway. That changed everything. That changed everything, because anybody who was watching could see it was a scam then. And even, the RE people and all, the NPCs and the normies, they lost their courage after that one. They lost their self-righteousness with people like me. Nobody said a word to me after that. Nobody said a word to me after that. I've had this one contact me. He actually rang my office. He said, I know you're a liar about the masks and that you wear a mask when you go into the shop. So, okay. I said, well, then why are you ringing me? I said, by the way, I'd already asked you not to contact me. Well, I know that. I said, why did you do this? Well, he said, I just know you're a liar. Okay, great, you know it. I said, well, then, what's the issue here? Is there anything more to say? And I could hear the building up at the other end of the phone line. It was really, it was comical. It was funny to listen to. He said, I want to know the names of those shops. Well, I said, you're not getting it. He said, but you've made these claims. So what? I said, it's just the internet. I said, obviously you listen to everything mainstream media tells you, so I don't know why you're bothered with me. Well, he said, if you're making these claims about shops, he said, I'm going to need to go around and research all of those shops. Off you go, I said. I said, you know the answer you'll get from them. I said, before you're committed to Port Ran. But having said that, I said, off you go. He said, but you should be telling me the names of them. Why should I said, tell me why. Why should I tell you anything? Well, he said, you've made these claims. Yes, I said, I've made these claims and I stand over them. Well, he said, I think you're a liar. Prove it, I said. So we hung up at that stage, but this is what you have to deal with. And it's part of this whole burlesque, isn't it? It's part of this whole pantomime we're going through. It's part of the fun. Part of the fun of it. These really, really sad individuals. I wouldn't call them people. I wouldn't call them human. So, in relation to Trump and the US election, again, the mainstream media, well, people could say they've disgraced themselves, but it reminds me of Homer Simpson the morning after he got drunk and he says to Bart, I hope I didn't embarrass you or let you down. Oh no, Dad, he said, you couldn't have fallen any lower in my esteem. And it's the same with the mainstream media. There's no surprises here. What do you think they're going to do? Be honest? Be objective? No, not at all. So here's how it plays. Donald Trump has played a blinder. And what he has done, and what we're witnessing now from a constitutional and legal point of view, is seriously the failure of the vote. Trump knows this. The vote across the United States has failed. So the US Constitution has very many protections and fallbacks for a situation like this. Now, Team Trump has already moved beyond the vote. They don't care about the vote. They're going through the motions here, but they're going to get this into court. I can tell you that myself. You can spot a bigger picture opening quite soon into one of these particular masquerades, and Team Trump are no longer interested in the votes because that whole thing has now fallen apart. It's a shambles. But it's okay. The founding fathers of the US were ready for stuff like this. They were ready. So we're now moving to the constitutional situation that happens when the vote fails. And the vote has failed. And those who formed the US Constitution were very brilliant men. They knew that popular votes like this can, even in the best of circumstances, and we're not in the best of circumstances, that they can fail. Ireland has a very rigorous, whatever Gemma O'Doherty may say, Ireland has a very rigorous electoral system here. All votes are done on paper, and they're all counted, and the ability to claim electoral fraud here in Ireland is much less than anybody could credibly claim in the US. And to get back to that point, the claims of electoral fraud in the US are extremely credible and widespread and backed up objectively. Whatever the Irish Times may be saying, there is very widespread evidence of voter fraud. That, in my opinion, is enough for Trump to be able to convince the Supreme Court that the vote has indeed failed. Hitler used plebiscites and used democratic popular votes to pursue his nefarious agenda. A democratic vote isn't the be-all and end-all. And indeed, the Electoral College system recognises that. Trump won in 2016, and he won legally and he won totally legitimately, although Clinton legally and legitimately got 3 million votes more than he did. So they recognised, the founding fathers of the US, recognised that popular votes are fallible. They're much more subjective than the mainstream media today will tell us. And that there needs to be a framework built around them. And this is the same in the Republic of Ireland. It's not in the UK. We, in terms of our referenda here in the Republic of Ireland, which are actually plebiscites, they're not referenda. We, in terms of our referenda, are aware that these things can fail and that they can become unreliable. Now, as I said already, the voting and system here and the counting system here is much more robust than in the US. At the same time, though, a vote is just a vote. It doesn't mean the be all and end all of everything. So the Constitution of Ireland and the Constitution of the United States recognises that and has put in place in the United States procedures to deal with what has happened now, whereby the vote has failed. And that is what has happened. The vote has failed. Trump knows that. Team Trump know that. They've already moved on. And they're getting ready now for the Supreme Court. And it's interesting to see exactly who Trump has put into the Supreme Court.